Welcome, I'm Lesley.
John and I are going to talk about what's inspired us to create this organization. And then we'll have some small group discussions, and then we'll come back together and talk about it all. And and that's how it's going to go. So let me pass it over right now to my Story House Ithaca co-director, John Miller.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my job is to give you a little biography because I think that's why everyone really came, was to learn my life story, who I am, and how we came to this moment in Storyhouse. And I'll be brief, I promise. I always figured I'd be a writer. Ended up wanting to collect experiences before I did that. Took a lot of time to get through college, spent a bunch of years sometime after college working in social services. I did construction work and was a forest ranger and forest firefighter and drove trucks and worked on farms and so on. When I was 27, my dear Rebecca, who's on this call, got her doctorate and got a job out in the Philippines. And at that point, I declared myself a journalist. And we moved out to the Philippines in '88 and spent 8 years there, had a couple kids, and I started to do all sorts of journalism work. And so I got experience in newspapers and wire services and magazines and working for organizations and doing a lot of radio, some television as well. So I started getting a lot of experience in different modes of storytelling. We stayed there for 8 years. By that time, I was the NPR guy out there. And then we moved to Peru, and we were there for 5 years. And I did more of the same, telling stories in a bunch of different media. And wrote a novel somewhere along the line there, but didn't, but really focused on the journalism side of things. When we came back to Ithaca, where Rebecca got a job at Cornell, I started running large journalism projects out of my attic in Forest Home. And they were international projects, sending reporters around the world, sending myself around the world, doing things mostly for radio, a little bit for NewsHour on PBS, but also NPR and Marketplace in the World. And so sort of kept my feet international, but I gradually started to feel more and more local. Like I wanted to know what was going on here and wanted to be more connected with this place. And one of the happy coincidences was that Ithaca is a city of asylum. There are just a few in the States, communities that welcome persecuted writers and artists and journalists and human rights defenders to the community and supports them. And Ithaca City of Asylum, a little volunteer group, and I started to get involved with that. Ticked some boxes for me. It was international, it was human rightsy, it was about creative expression and freedom of expression, and it was about talking across distance and across difference in all things I felt very comfortable with. Being part of the board of Ithaca City of Asylum, I represented our group at a meeting in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. This was an international meeting of the same sorts of groups and all sorts of like refugee artists and writers. And that was in 2019, May of 2019, I found myself there. And one of the co-hosts of that meeting was an organization that really knocked my socks off and impressed me a lot and made me think, we gotta have one of them back home. And in a little narrative trick, I'm not gonna tell you about that place yet. I'm gonna hand you over to Lesley, and she's gonna take over.
So tricky. Oh, not. Hello again. Okay, so let me introduce myself. I have a lot fewer places in my story. I grew up in Maryland, and then I came to Ithaca for university, went to Cornell, studied various sciences, didn't use any of those degrees at all. But I worked for over 20 years at the Kitchen Theater, doing various things. I helped produce plays, I produced performance series, I was the in-house sound and projection designer, I did marketing, I wrote grants, so like various things there. And another thing I did in that time period was I was the co-creator and to this day co-organizer of Porch Fest, which started in Ithaca in 2007, and with 20 bands locally. And then the last time we did it in 2019, it was 180 bands. And not only that, the cool thing is that it's has the idea of having Porch Fest has spread like throughout North America. And so at last count, there's like 160 some Porch Fests out there, which is cool. But what I think really sort of joins these things that I've been up to is that I really love arts and I really love community. And so in 2020, that crazy year, when when things got a little weird at the Kitchen Theater, fortunately they're less weird now, but in any case, I was leaving the Kitchen Theater, met John, got really excited about the idea of Story House Ithaca, and like jumped right on board. And the place that John was going to tell about that got him so excited happens to be in the Netherlands. And I happen to be married to a Dutchman. So I go to the Netherlands fairly regularly. And I was there in December and visited this place, Story House Belvedere. It's located in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Rotterdam is a port town with like hundreds of immigrant groups make it home. And this place, Story House Belvedere, is located not in like central downtown Rotterdam, but in like a kind of industrial area. But, you know, this is a beautiful, beautiful building that was didn't start out that way for these guys. So in August 2008, there were two photographers who were coming, Dutch photographers, and a couple. They came to Rotterdam to do a photojournalism project and ended up like needing a spot to stage the work. And this was somebody made it available to them. They used this, and their project was they photographed groups of people from the area. And there's a book of like 155 group portraits. But that was a start of something, of bringing people together, hearing stories from the people who live there. And fast forward to 2012, with the help of government money, because it's the Netherlands, businesses and private investors who were bondholders, they purchased the building. And now they have this place where they say their mission is to connect as many people as possible with each other and with the city through art, culture, and personal stories. The stories they present in the form of exhibitions, performances, tours, publications, lots of other events, and food. They say the form is always different, but the working method is the same: hospitable, positive, and personal. And their target, they say, which I think is very sweet and did resonate when I was there, is that they're promoting people's happiness and working toward a more involved city and society. So let's walk in the doors, like as I did. So the ground floor is a cafe and a performance event space. When I was there, there were performers who were from Cape Verde. They were musicians celebrating what would have been the 100th birthday of a famous singer from Cape Verde. And so they were singing her songs and talking about her life and music. And people were freely coming and going to this cafe. Although it's a commercial kitchen, it's not, there's not a professional chef. Instead, they call it a volkskoken, a people's kitchen, where every day there is a different chef. So this month they have chefs who are from Chile, Syria, Cape Verde, Italy, Turkey, Curacao, Indonesia, and other countries. So these people come, they prepare food, they share their migration stories. So the pictures on the right side of the image are from the publication that was sitting on the tables about the life of the woman who cooked the food that I ate that day, Ana Paula de Cruz, who's from Cape Verde, and it talks about like how did she get to Rotterdam and what was her life like growing up, and probably things about the food. The Dutch writing has slowed me down a little bit in getting through it all. But so, and for 10 euros, like $11, you get a whole meal, including dessert. Plus, they have tea and coffee and wine and beer. So, I mean, so the meal experience was really lovely, and includes this idea of story and sharing experiences. Here's another couple pictures of that space. I wasn't at this performance, but same space, an evening performance, another performance in the space. So, I mean, these are all musicians, but I think it's a variety of activities that happen in this space. Okay, so now go upstairs, and the whole building is beautiful. Upstairs, one flight up, is a gallery, and they show work by local artists. So when I was there in December, they showed work from all the artists that they'd shown this past year, and you could buy it. And then Story House Belvedere has lots of publications also for sale. Okay, and then up another flight, actually, there's a staircase, and there's more of the gallery, and then up again, there's like a listening room, I would call it, where on each of those tables in the room, there's an iPad that has video and audio podcasts on it. There's a little coffee bar in the corner, and you can see the headsets there. So you grab an iPad and headsets, and you can listen to stories that they have on there. I know that when I was there, one of the stories was they had recently collected these stories from Chinese immigrants community in that area, but I think that they have a whole range. Okay, and then this is on that same floor, a little room that's a storage and a recording studio, and there is Joop, what is his last name? What is it?
Reingode?
Yeah, that's who it was. And he's one of the founders of this place, and I got to sit down with him, which was really cool, and hear the story of the place's founding. And he was happy and excited for us starting something like this in Ithaca. And then I didn't visit it, but one floor up is an apartment that houses a refugee artist. So that's, John said that they're part of the International Cities of Asylum, and that's so that artist who lives up there participates in activities in the place as well. Here's like a little screen capture from their website, just a little feeling of the sorts of events that they have going on, music, exhibitions. The next slide too has it's hard to read, but there's walking tours. They have a program where you can sign up and have a meal with somebody who's brand new to Rotterdam. So they pair people old and new to Rotterdam for meals, just one of their programs. And then outside the space, they have this mobile story unit. That's the inside of it where people can record stories. So very, very cool. And then that's my husband and me dancing there, and others to the music from Cape Verde. I was there with one of my daughters and my husband, and all of us felt excited and inspired by the place, but also comfortable and happy. So I feel like going back to what they say, that they promote people's happiness, working toward a more involved city and society. It definitely worked on us. So now that's it for Story House Belvedere, though later I'm happy to take any questions. But John is going to tell you about another place that inspires us.
Indeed. And I was so pleased when Lesley went to Story House Belvedere, and I was kind of nervous that she wasn't going to be as impressed as I was, and she was. So it was really it was great that she felt the same vibe that I did, same excitement. Uh, Another place is quite a bit closer to home in Pittsburgh that inspires me. And in fact, I had been talking with the founders of the City of Asylum Pittsburgh and a sub program that you'll learn about in a second called Alphabet City. Uh, I'd been talking to them in Rotterdam at that very meeting and made a date to go visit. And I spent a day, an overnight in Pittsburgh, checking out this organization, and both of those images. These are screen grabs from their website, but they will make sense in a second. Back in the 90s, Henry Reese and Diane Samuels lived on this alleyway, kind of little street in Pittsburgh, in North Pittsburgh. It was pretty depressed, and the houses had been used as drug houses, and they were being, what's the word, repossessed and for sale for cheap. And they bought one. They lived on this street, but they also bought the house, and they didn't really know what they wanted to do with it until they heard about this international program of communities that are welcoming refugee writers in, or writers who are at risk or persecuted, into their communities. And as they explained it to me, they both kicked each other under the table. They were listening to Salman Rushdie talk, and he was talking about this new movement to do this, where writers, solidarity, welcome people in danger into their communities. And they kicked each other under the table and said, that's what we should do with a house that we have. And so they refurbished this house, and they found a person to occupy it. And that person is Wang Xiang, a Chinese poet who had spent 12 years in prison in China, and had been, I think, on and off. And he had been tortured on multiple occasions, and he was living in the States, but he wasn't thriving. I think he was driving a cab. And they invited him to this house, and the first thing he did was painted poems on the surface of the house, on the outside of the house. And then once it was all painted up, he would give these readings in the streets, spontaneous as I understand it, but also I'm sure he said out the word. But these are in Chinese, so I think his energy was probably more appreciated than his poetry by most of the people there. But this began a buying spree by Henry, who was a businessman, and Diane, who's an artist. And they bought 6 houses on this little alley, on this little street, Samsonia Way. And each one over the years has been painted up with murals that reflect the refugee writers or the exiled writers, the at-risk writers. Refugees, technically, probably not right. But the folks who are living in them, and they're from all sorts of different countries, and there's meaning in all of these murals and other details. And here are just a few more details. The door in the center, the vertical, has if I were to zoom in, you could see it's writing by Wole Soyinka, the Nigerian Nobel Prize winning writer, who is a great friend of this program. So they, as I mentioned, began as a refuge for persecuted writers type of program, but they started to do programming, and upper left you see a street festival. They would put tents in vacant lots and have readings and concerts and other public events there. They bought a vacant lot. On the lower left you see Diane at this park, a city park, Alphabet City Park. I've forgotten what they call it, but it's really a cool park, reading park. And it's they have all these details on the ground about alphabets and writing and communication, and people use the park for all sorts of good things. Then I'm not sure just when they bought it, but the building on the left is a beautiful corner lot building in a depressed part of town that was a Masonic temple. People in Ithaca may be aware that we have one too. It was empty, and they purchased this and renovated it to where, if you look at the picture of the building, it's 3 storefronts. And on the left side is a restaurant or cafe that they actually lease to a real restaurant company. And then the middle, as we'll see in a second, is an event space, and on the right is this bookstore, and the door on the right is just a shot of that bookstore door, city of Asylum. They call this place Alphabet City. This is just an interior shot if you're standing in the bookstore looking across the event space to the cafe. And they've taken the walls down and put posts up instead, or I'm not sure just how they did that, but there are no walls between these three bays, these three areas. And this shot is looking the other way from the cafe toward the bookstore across the event space. Here is the event space in use. So during the day, people can hang out on the couches and the chairs, but in the and people do, and just bring something to read or whatever, or read what they just bought in the bookstore. But in the evenings, they have tons and tons of programming. I believe it's 180-ish events per year. They've become a real important cultural institution in Pittsburgh, just super active. So I'm not quite sure what the bigger picture on the left is. It looks from the piano and the woman's gesture to be a music event. And on the right is a story slam in ASL, American Sign Language, but just two of constant flow of events. Many of them literary, but many of them musical or film and community. It's all grassrootsy. It's not necessarily. It's really not about fancy artists coming in and showing off. It's more community sourced, and they pack them in. There's quite a good. This is they bring in the audiences for this. The building has a downstairs too, where there are all sorts of little rooms, really nicely equipped conference rooms and classrooms and other spaces. This is both shots of the same space, but you can see a workshop. In fact, they're both workshops. I think the one on the right is a master class, but the left one is a workshop, and so it's really comfortable space for them. They rent out to community groups to do stuff like that. This is just a screenshot of some of the activities that Alphabet City puts on. This happens to be March 13th, 14th, and 15th, so you've missed the first two. If you want to catch the third, you still have time. But it's too small for me. I'm trying to read. But there's a jazz thing. There's a non-white collective dialogue. And then there's an outfit called Story Club, or it's a project that they've started, which is like the Moth competitive storytelling slam. That's Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. There's a lot going on there. Enough, however, about Rotterdam and Pittsburgh. This is the portion of our program where we get to talk a little bit about what we're up to and what we've been doing. I came back from this visit to Rotterdam and then subsequent visit in the summer in 2019 to Pittsburgh, and started sharing this idea about a story house in our town. And everyone I spoke with was really into the idea, a little confused about what I was raving about, but with these two inspirations, I was describing them, and we got a really great group of people together, and we put together a first sort of test, a pilot, and that was an exhibition called "How Did We Get Here?" That was at the Cap Art Space Gallery in downtown, on the Commons in downtown Ithaca, and we got the gallery for a month. And we had the lower left photo. You can see the opening night, the first Friday gallery night. A really interesting exhibition there with 4 different distinct exhibits, including an international cartooning exhibit about migration. The theme was all about migration. How do we get here? And how do we get to this situation that we're in about migration as well? But 4 really interesting little exhibits. A film, some panels, some other talks about people's journeys with different communities in town. And then in 2020, that was when, as Lesley mentioned, she and I met up, and we really took off because Lesley is someone who makes things happen, and has been totally instrumental for getting this from pilot to reality. And Lesley, I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so our first big project, some of you actually participated in. It was called Pandemic Dreams, and it was a community source video project. We asked people how did they envision the world, life after the pandemic, and think about that, make a video, submit it, and we got really wonderful submissions from all kinds of people who are in the form of song, dance, puppetry, animation. We had kids from Village at Ithaca talking. We had lifelong seniors telling their vision. And then we presented all the videos on a Zoom conversation, because that's the world we're in. And but it was really wonderful to see all these different visions of the world. So then we kept up some programming, and we'll tell you more about that. But we in 2021 we really became official. We applied and were accepted to be a part of the Center for Transformative Action, and that gives us tax-free status, lets us write grants and solicit donations, provides all sorts of other services. Lots of incredible organizations have gotten their start here and are still a part of, and others have been longtime projects of the CTA. As part of that, we formed an advisory board. We have a fantastic advisory board. Here they are. Some of them are on this call as well. And John's going to talk about like what else we've been up to.
We have continued to do stuff despite the pandemic, or I don't continued for such a new group, but we've done a bunch of stuff, and particularly during the summer, it was easier to operate. But we on this slide is a sampling. We helped Krista Nunez at the Learning Farm shoot some videos for a project that she had. We also shot some video at the 100th anniversary of Stewart Park, and collected some cool stories, people's memories of that. We supported Kenneth McLaurin in a comedy workshop, and also in a comedy performance that he put together. We worked with the Children's Reading Connection, videotaping some of the work that they're doing out on the streets. We're putting children's books out on fences, so in public, so folks can read them. We've also established a few creative partnerships with people. On the upper left, Reggie Carpenter, the great storyteller who tours the world telling stories, sort of personal stories generally. And Sing Treese in the lower left, who's a wonderful soul singer and other sorts of singers, and songwriter and teacher. Upper right, Kenneth, who's on our advisory board and is a comedian and a real mover, shaker, maker of an impresario, makes things happen in town. And then Jay Leeming, who's also a world-class storyteller we are fortunate to have here in Ithaca. And so we're helping in various ways and working with them, co-promoting events and things like that. And we're very open for more of such creative partnerships.
So in the pipeline, we've got a lot of things planned for the spring and summer and fall. Story House Tuesdays. This is actually part of Story House Tuesdays. We have this idea that we're going to stake a claim on all your Tuesdays, and that we'll have something interesting going every week. And we're just beginning to ramp that up. Bar choir, we're going to be holding bar choirs, which will move to different locations, but you'll come together and you'll learn you'll learn a song and sing it in 3-part harmony. We have the wonderful Kristen Zarisky from Ithaca High School will be the artistic director of that program. story night. Soon, we're going to get that off the ground, and that will be a monthly storytelling event, at least at first, where anybody can come and share stories. Listening room will be for listening to podcasts together and talking about them. We're sending Reggie Carpenter and Jay Leeming into the rural libraries to do storytelling. With Kenneth McLaurin, we're going to offer in the fall the Better Than Black Panther Film Festival. The bottom there, Dr. Nia Nunn, she's coming in March to do part 2 of her Placemakers series event, talking about a Black consciousness curriculum in and beyond February. So join us for that as well. And so much more. Like, we want you to pitch your ideas to us. And there's, in fact, on our website, a form where you can do that. On the right, Breaking Our Silence, that'll be a big, more than month-long event about storytelling and mental health, with screenings, workshops, discussions, performances. We'll have like dance therapy workshop. We'll have, we're going to incorporate the work of civic ensembles, reentry theater that is doing a play on that topic as well. We'll have a performance on May 21st, mark your calendars, at Ithaca High School. It'll have the Ithaca High School choir and a lot of these performers and people also just sharing their mental health stories. So that's what's coming up.
Yeah, and let me say that Breaking Our Silence for me is an example of the sort of programming that probably wouldn't happen without a group like ours. So I think when we talk to people about what Storyhouse is about, we're often, folks say, well, doesn't the library do that, or don't the bookstores do that, or couldn't you go to a community center and see that or do that thing? And I think, yeah, a lot of the things we are hoping to do, could happen at other places as well, or under other auspices. But I think this idea of putting people together and bringing people together under the same sort of umbrella or the same sort of tent. Sometimes this will sound a little corny, but when we put together our little logo, the logo has a roof, but it doesn't have walls. And the idea is that people come together and leave, and come together and leave under this roof. And lots of interesting stuff would happen there. And I think Breaking Our Silence is a cool example of, Cinemapolis is involved, the National Alliance on Mental Illness local office is involved, the Sophie Fund is involved, quite a few players, quite a few people, and our job is really to put it all together and to make noise about it. So we are, a work in progress, and that's fun and exciting for us. And we're asking ourselves a lot of questions. And I think one of the original questions, the big questions, is that you may notice that the inspirations we just talked about in Pittsburgh and in Rotterdam are physical spaces, and our name is a house, story house. Can a story house be a place without a place? Can it just be a virtual house, or we're all gathered here in our own houses, I suppose? But we're still actively asking ourselves the question about how important is it that we have a space? And we've had that conversation a lot, and we've done like visioning exercises and so on. And it always comes up that it would be really cool. We'd really like to have a space. It would make a big difference. And I think the idea that if we were in a place and people knew where we were and you could come in and come out, things would happen just because of that, the way they do more in Rotterdam in Storyhouse Belvedere than in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a little bit more of a performance space and arts programming, but what we're envisioning is a maker space and a place where people would have projects going on, where in the back rooms there's somebody working on a project of some sort, that's in a storage closet, somebody's puppetry stuff is there, or whatever, that this would be a place where there would be a lot of bubbling creativity going on at all times. And so a place would be nice. And then if a place, then how do we pull that off? Do we share it with another business or organization or group of organizations? Do we somehow try to buy an existing space, or build a space, rent a space, beg a space? Or do we continue popping up? And certainly we can continue popping up for a while until we find a space. And then the big question, which you are not obliged to answer for us, is how will we pay the bills when no matter what model we go with. But in the spirit of transparency, we'll include that as a question we're asking ourselves. We also would love your feedback on basically two questions. What kind of story house do you want, and what would you like to see happen there? Well, thanks for you folks for coming back and doing that. Lesley, the plan from here is just totally freeform, and we have as many as 28 minutes if we want it. You're not nobody's held to that, but it would be great to hear people's ideas.
Yeah, I would love to hear what people were saying in those rooms. If anyone, you can put things in the chat, but also if you just want to speak up, unmute yourself and speak up, we'd love to hear from you.
There's this thing that I've seen scroll through Facebook a couple of times. I have no idea where they're talking about, but some library where you can check out a person instead of a book.
It's so funny. We were just talking about that in our room as well, a human library. I think it's a concept that does move around, but we like that. We have a big list of ideas and programming ideas, event ideas, and that is on there for sure. That's a cool one.
I would say some of the things I learned in our group was, one, the idea of developing through thinking about it as pop-ups for quite a while, like not focusing too soon on finding a building and taking on all that requires. And the pop-ups allow you to really be within other communities and connecting with them instead of expecting people to come to you, so the developing of the programming and the ideas and how storytelling connects us through pop-ups was one idea. Two was how much more deeply we get to know each other when we share these kinds of experiences. So that was really great. And third, there was some talk about the Cherry Theater and Crankies, the Cranky
Festival. I bet you had Marietta in your room. No. Oh, cool.
No, without. Yeah. Actually, I'll take credit. I introduced that because I saw the Crankies and really got to know some of the people that I thought I knew, by what stories they told. So, that's what I would say came up in our group.
Another thing that came up in our group was a very short comment, which is look around at all of our faces.
Oh.
Just mentioning that.
Yeah. Yep.
Can add to the document. Sorry, I'm seeing
who is here and who is not here. Is that what you mean, Nicole?
Just a white group.
Right.
Yes. That's.
I mean, I don't want to assume that everybody here is, from appearances, everybody's face is white.
And a third of the people are dancers.
But it's not just skin color. It's that you already have an interest. You've heard of storytelling as a connection, and not everybody has. We talk to our close friends, people that we feel safe with. And what's really lovely about this whole idea is creating an area where anybody can tell a story. And I think the more that you share, the safer you feel. So it would be good to bring friends, or good to be in other spaces. What are we trying again now?
I'm sorry. Anne wasn't able to edit the document, and I think I have fixed it so that she can, I'm hoping.
I tried again. It says I can request access, but it's not letting me put anything in the document.
Well, darn. Let me see if I can try. If you refresh, I think I changed the settings. Sorry about that.
I'll refresh it and see if that helps.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm just kind of amazed at all the people who, some of whom I know now, but some of people I remember from the past, like Ann Rhodes. Oh my God. It's like, you know, that my 50-year-old was in school with your 50-year-old.
We've been around for a while, Shelley.
Yes.
I don't know if Anne's a person from the past. She's very much in the
She's
present.
from that I know her from the past in another life.
Yeah, so in the other, I know in our group has been represented in this report back moment about popping up, and we did not get into what about this space, what about that space kind of discussion at all. It was more about building trust by appearing in other spaces.
In our room, we were very much about space.
Okay, well, you tell us about it.
Well, I think there was a kind of consensus, if I'm not overstating it. Lesley checked me here, that space, a consistent space where people can meet repeatedly and get to know one another, would be at the core of creating connection. Whereas the pop-up experience, as vital as that can be, does not permit or rather suggests a kind of eventness of things as opposed to a creating of a community. It assumes a community, a larger community, and I think there's some validity to that. And then that story connects people. But someone in our group, I can't remember who, I apologize, said that they hear a story and then go away and then don't really have a way to continue the story. So it's about people meeting on a regular basis and creating a place where accidental connections and accidental projects and where friendships will flourish. So, because that's at the core of it. So that was an upshot of I think a big piece of what we talked about, and what didn't get talked about, but I saw is that what we did talk about is hidden disabilities, and I think kind of the hidden question under this space thing is, how does a space get paid? Finally, things boiled. We're living in modern times in America. How do you pay for things? How is something going to happen? Either by paying for it in kind, or with money, or in some kind of way, value for value way. How do you make this happen? I hope it's not a cynical point of view, but my experience in life has been that if people want something to happen and have the wherewithal, that is the economic wherewithal or whatever amounts to economic wherewithal, get it done. And otherwise, it's not happening.
You leave out people who don't have that wherewithal and who are embarrassed to show up because they don't.
Well, there was some discussion in our room about, or maybe it was here, I think it was here, where there was some talk about generosity. So the people who have need to get generous. And well, if you're going to have a community, there needs to be generous people among the people. If it's a real community,
I think you have to create the community though before that. I mean, I just kind of want to have groups of people from all over, people that I've never met before, who have. It's not that I think everybody here, even if like Vicki and Lesley are really good friends, I keep picturing them having a glass of wine later this evening. One of them will walk across the street.
Like a lush.
well, I'd be an exception to that. I know no one here, and I've been in Ithaca for 20 years. Not that I've been out there getting to meet, but I didn't have kids in school. I don't have a 50-year-old who went to school with your 50-year-olds. And I'm pretty much by myself.
Go eat in the room, you'll meet everybody in town.
Huh?
Come to the Rook tonight, you'll meet everybody in town.
Oh, okay. They'll all be at the Rook.
Well, I don't know, I'll be there, and I just figured that's all that's important. I'm kidding, that was a joke.
Yeah, no, I get that it's a joke. I got it.
I mean, to speak just a little bit to like the diversity question, like that is super important to John and to me and to the advisory board. And so a lot of effort will go into that for sure. Zoom is, I don't know, it will be, I think, a lot easier when we are in person and can and do things and bring, reach out to various different parts of the community and bring them together.
We could
Well,
have
somebody
a story
said, look at
corner
it.
on the boat, on the Teal.
Yeah, we could do that. But I was in the same group with Richard, and I was very excited right away during the Rotterdam talk, just in thinking right away, the Masonic Temple. I figured that's the perfect place. And it's got a kitchen already. It's got lots of windows and light. It's been sitting empty for years. Jason Fain, I said, could redeem himself and sell it at a good price or let it go. And I think you could just get different grants, maybe on pie in the sky, but I could see it happening there. It's a downtown location, and you can just bring together many groups. There's New Roots right across the street. Get the people who are hanging out on the commons with their CDs. Just get all the different people together. So,
It would be
Yeah,
amazing.
food definitely helps.
Amazing.
yeah,
But I
and
wouldn't-
having good food.
I wouldn't count on Jason being generous.
And then Moosewood's right across the street, so they could give their extra food over to, the kitchen there. That's in the Masonic Temple. So that was just like popped up as like, that's the place.
Also, somebody said, look around at the faces. We talk about diversity. I don't mean to out us here, but where are the kids?
They grew up and left.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch here. I think there must be some here. There must be some. We're all as I look around the room, older. Let's say.
Thank you for not saying old. Okay.
No, I don't feel old at all.
That is another part of it, and that is another part of the work that we will absolutely have to do to bring.
Yeah, because yeah.
That's why I was talking about. Go ahead, Andrea.
Some of us are older than others. I see some younger faces in this group.
Well, apart from me, who is that?
That is
Marietta Mackenzie, who might have just left. Where'd she go? Where'd he go?
She's back.
I don't think we're all ancient.
I didn't say ancient,
nobody
but
said ancient.
I think we need. I think we'd be dishonest to say that. Is there anybody there's probably nobody under 50. As I look around,
but in any case, there are. But in any case, this
you,
is
Lesley,
not the sum.
perhaps.
I'm over, but this is not the sum total of who Storyhouse is or will be, and we've already had events that have been diverse in terms of age and other ways too. So yes, we will absolutely think about how for these sorts of events we diversify, but I think going forward, this is not indicative of what we're going for.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is a bit conceptual. This event is about, here are our plans for a new organization. Who wants to come to that? It's a different set of people. But but diversity and and I mean, the whole point of the thing is to bring communities together, not just to be another arts organization. The arts organizations we have are wonderful and fantastic, and bless them. But this isn't that. This is a somewhat different vision. I hope came through from our presentation. For me, this connection that the Storyhouse Belvedere people manage to strike, where you've got some kind of scruffy artists and photographers and storytellers who just love the idea of having a space, and then that space lots and lots of sweat equity in that space. They've got photos of them working on it. It was a real disaster it was a wreck of a building, and then they fixed it up and put years of labor into it, and then open the doors and people come in, and they do a lot of work to attract people. Like, we got this space, that we have a kitchen. Would you guys like to come and do a dinner for us? Would you? And there's a lot of outreach. So yeah, you can't in this business, I believe, build it and expect they'll come. There's just an awful lot of work that needs to be done in the community.
Right.
But you have to have something to invite people to. But I do find this idea of the pop-up still, which is what we're doing, to be logical, just a little less exciting than having this space for very much the reasons that Richard explained. A place that's always there, where something is always going on, where people come to feel comfortable after some time. It's like, yeah, I've been there a couple times. What's going on at Story House? Look it up online. That could be interesting. They're always doing interesting things there. Just this notion of a place, a house where folks can come in. We would never imagine, I think, stopping doing more outreachy types of, maybe that's a terrible word, I believe, but more stuff in the community, going into the rural towns in the county, and doing participatory work with kids and with elders and with other folks who don't naturally gravitate to programming like this. Anyway, it takes a lot of, it's really going to take a lot of impetus from our end.
And if I can add actually something, John, having just left my 30s a month ago, I would have been 39 if this happened in January. To me, part of the appeal of this vision of Story House is also that Story House Ithaca is a place that this event could happen one night and everybody and then tomorrow it could be a very different event with a very different demographic. And then the next day after that, there's an event that maybe it's just kids, and that's part of the energy that is created around a place. And that, of course, of course there are events where there's crossover, but that all of these things can happen under one roof without the walls, I think, this is only the second, right, of these Story House Tuesdays, but there was a different crowd that was here for Dr. Nia Nunn's conversation last month. So yeah, I just, I wouldn't be set back by the fact that tonight's event has one particular demographic, and I just feel like that's part of, to me, the appeal of what we're doing here.
Yeah, I'm not put off by it. I'm just noticing it because somebody said, look at the faces, and the default diversity pitch is we need people of different ethnicities and colors, and age is a thing too. And that's all I was pointing out, because as I looked around, I didn't see you. Had I seen you, I would have said, "Hey, we have this kid here," and but I think it's important, and all the points that people are making are well taken. The pop-up thing, however, it's people popping up. We can all pop up anywhere, anyhow. Nobody's stopping us from popping up. You want to build a community, you need a space, I think.
Another thing that I've been thinking about with this question, I think it's a fun and interesting question to play with, about do you need a space or not? And I confess to being sort of in Richard's camp on this, where I really love to have a space. I think it's less work and it's more doable. And I say less work not out of laziness, but out of foment. That you can get stuff going on. If you have a base, like someone approaches you and say, "I've got this thing. I've been working with these kids in 4-H, and we've got this video that we did, and I want to talk about that." We can say, come on in, what works for you next week, the week after. Just people, do you guys have any recording equipment that we could borrow? Come on in. Yeah, we've got some to sign it out. That we're in a space, in a place where I feel like that in itself sort of generates movement, and where it's not like, well, we'll do this program. Where can we do it? What would be a good time? Let's ask and see if that place is available. It's going to be at 7:00. We'll do it. That's a different vibe for me. It's a different.
I couldn't agree more. I think it would be lovely to have a place that's called Story House Ithaca. But in order for you to have a building, a place that is yours to do this, it's going to change your conversation at the beginning. That's what my worry is, that if you're concentrating on finding this house, given everything, to say, okay, I'm moving out of my house and you can have Story House here. Sadly, I can't afford to do that. And I agree that it would be easier in planning things or looking at group and say, well, we have all this, but we don't have it yet. So that would be a goal to me.
May I call on my dear spouse who's lurking? You've done you're not lurking, you're attentively there. Rebecca's got this really interesting project, and Eric knows a lot about it as well. Beck, can you describe the soil factory setup? Because that really is so place-based. Do you mind me putting you on the spot?
Anne has been there as well. So yeah, I was saying in our small group that we have a place looking for, programming, and the Story House has programming looking for a place. But yeah, it's kind of a big warehouse situation, and it's pretty raw. It's nice and outdoor. It's got a big open outdoor space to it.
This is down by Ithaca Beer Company.
Yeah, it's just right below Ithaca Beer. And people manage to find themselves at Ithaca Beer in large numbers, I observe. Yeah, maybe not, every kind of person you might want to have or whatever, but, it seems to, people don't find it too difficult to crowd that place up. So, but I don't know, I sort of feel like for Story House, if you look optimistically at this phase of popping up where you can build relationships with different communities and serve different communities in different ways, and maybe as the opportunities open up to have a home base, then you've done some of the bridge building already. So I don't know, I'm leaving this conversation with more enthusiasm for the pop-up phase than I had before. I always felt like homeless or something, but and I think definitely Story House events, as far as I'm concerned, would be very welcome over at the Soil Factory. The Soil Factory is called the Soil Factory because it was a soil factory at one point for a company that now built a huge soil factory in Cortland.
Where is it?
It's right below Ithaca Beer on Brewery Lane. So if you come in off 13A or
Floral Avenue,
drive up, and instead of going up the hill, you just go kind of left or straight to get to the end of that little lane, and there's a kind of a it's just a big kind of a warehousey place with a couple of shipping containers out in front, and so it's a place where people could do gardening out on the lawn area, a little straw bale garden going there, and there's a lot of art and music events that take place there, and I don't know why it couldn't be for anything anybody wanted to do. There's a bunch of chairs, and it's spacious, and so I would absolutely love to have Story House events there. And it's so weird, and it's like, is it a place where old white people feel comfortable, or people of color from the city feel, or rural people? Nobody feels comfortable. It's inherently uncomfortable. So I don't think anybody could identify it as their people's space, unless you're like a tractor or something.
Cool people. It's the coolest place. Is there a website for it? And if so, John, would you or Rebecca put it in the chat, because I think it's just the coolest.
Web too. Let me see if I can find anything. I never have looked at it, but I think
this coming Friday there's going to be a depressing Eastern European movie for free, and we can bring a bottle of beer or wine or with you or whatever. It's
Do they?
or not.
If it's depressing, do they pay you?
It's not. It's invigorating and lovely. No, I mean it's just that it's not. It certainly doesn't have the cachet that our hosts, Lesley and Johnny, have been showing us these beautiful places. That it's no Rotterdam. Let's put it that way. But it's if you're okay, Eric, your comment, please.
Yeah, it's the artists and musicians in town. We pay no mind to the settings. Any place that'll take us, we're loving it.
But I think story slammers could enjoy it too. A bunch of chairs hanging around, let the kids run wild. We could definitely take a junior demographic and not worry about the effects on the upholstery or anything.
We have I can see just a couple minutes left. Are there any questions that you want to ask us? We didn't really take questions. Yeah.
Can I just make a quick suggestion?
Oh,
that,
yes.
that may tie in the pop-up and the space discussion. If we could find a space where we could at least meet regularly. So, like instead of meeting here on Tuesday nights, Tuesday night at the warehouse. Everyone who wants to come to Story House will be there Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
At
Argo's Warehouse is someplace that we've talked about doing exactly that in. So yeah, that is something we have thought about, Argo's Warehouse. But anyway, this idea is, wait, Anne had her hand up first, but I see other hands are up. But Anne, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, if you're considering staying with PopUp for a while, I know that John and I were both at the charrette for the arts neighborhood that's being put up over by the inlet near the Cherry Arts Theater, and there could be a space there that could be the Story House space.
Yeah,
but those buildings are not built yet.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
Well, maybe it's a blessing. Maybe
it's possible to do pop-ups or a temporary space until that becomes true, because that would be a great location.
Yeah.
It has to be easily gotten to without needing, for those of you who bike ride, my hat is off to you, but I've broken both ankles and had my knee operated, and I am not falling again in my life. But I think that's another reason for having different areas, is that how people get to it.
Yeah.
And are they willing to come? And I would also like to say, is everybody, 5:30 on Tuesdays, that's what you're going to be. I have to say, Tuesday it's girls' night at the Rook. For my friends, it's not a big deal, Victoria. You're welcome to show up. Just happens there are more people coming tonight and I have to go. But I think that there are so many my hats are off to you, and I'm terrified. I'm very glad I'm not the one who's in charge of organizing. I'm very good at talking, but that's about where it stops.
Vicky, you.
Oh,
your hand is up.
Mid space, I just thought about Trader K's and then the range above it. Wow, wouldn't that be great? And yes, if we could all walk there, or many of us could walk there, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
But I had a question, because I never got to join the comedy group, which I wanted to do. When's comedy night? When are they performing? And the other thing was, before you answer that, I'm enjoying things on Zoom. I don't have a job where I'm on Zoom all the time. So I was able to, without paying any money, have my dinner and meet with all you lovely people. So there is something to be said for Zoom. But anyways, comedy night, when's that?
I'll look into that. So there was a class, and I know there was a showing, but I don't know that it was a public showing. But I'll ask and see. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to mention something. Rebecca has asked me to share a screen with the Soil Factory website, but instead I think we are out of time. But please note that in the chat, there's a link, and if you click that link, it'll open in your browser, and then it'll be up on your computers if you're interested. When we close down the this session, which we are true to, we got to be true to our word. We said 7 p.m., so we should thank folks and
thank you so much. This was really great to hear from all of you. Great to say out loud these things we've been talking about with a smaller group. It's good.
Yeah, I am so grateful for all of you and for those of you, this group sticking it out, and this has been a really useful for us, and we're still excited about this project and gonna need the whole, takes a village.